In the name of God, and praise be to God, and prayers and peace be upon the Messenger of God, and upon his family and companions, and those who follow him. O God, there is nothing easy except what you make easy, and you make sorrow easy. If you will, O God, teach us what benefits us, and benefit us with what you have taught us, and increase us in knowledge. O God, make all our deeds purely for your noble countenance, and do not let anyone else have any part in them. O Lord of the worlds, welcome, dear friends. May you be blessed, and may your steps be blessed, and may you be granted a place in paradise. We ask God, blessed and exalted is he, just as he has gathered us in obedience to him, to gather us in his paradise, the abode of his mercy, and the home of his honor. This is the 33rd session of the prophetic biography sessions. Upon its own be the best prayers and peace. We stopped in the previous session at the lessons of the migration to Abyssinia, and we mentioned some of them. Who remembers how many lessons? 16. We completed the lesson and concluded by mentioning that in Abyssinia, a funny anecdote occurred, one that those who enjoy humor and jokes like to share. It is that our master Amr ibn al-As, may God be pleased with him, was the only companion who converted to Islam at the hands of a follower tabi'i. This is problematic because the original definition of a companion is someone who saw the Messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, and died a Muslim. However, a follower is someone who did not see the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, but rather saw the companions of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. So how could a companion convert to Islam at the hands of a follower? We mentioned that our master Amr ibn al-As was a friend of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and he returned from this mission disappointed and having not achieved his goal. Then the days passed, and the matter of the Messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, continued to rise. A prophet migrated to establish the Islamic state, and then the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, fought in the way of God. Amr ibn al-As witnessed the Battle of the Trench. Then Amr ibn al-As, with his intelligence, understood that this man's matter was rising, so he chose a path for himself, a path to which his intelligence guided him, and that is, he leaves Mecca and does not enter into the war of Muhammad, may God bless him and grant him peace, on the basis that if the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, is victorious, our master Amr will not be present in this, meaning he will not taste the bitterness of defeat and humiliation. Well, if the Quraish are victorious, then in the end, Amr ibn al-As will remain, and he is the brilliant, intelligent man. So in the end, our master Amr ibn al-As is a man, meaning he is competent in all circumstances, even if he is absent from his people for a period, and then returns to them, they will return to him. So when he went to the Negus and stayed there, of course, we mentioned that the Negus embraced Islam, and when the Battle of the Trench ended and the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, began the global call after the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, he sent letters to the kings, and among those to whom he sent letters was the Negus, from Muhammad, the messenger of God, to the Negus, the great one of Abyssinia. Embrace Islam and you will be safe, and embrace Islam and God will give you your reward. Twice. So Amr ibn al-As was in this situation with a Negus, the messenger sent by the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, was a man named Amr ibn Umayr al-Damri. This man, the ambassador, was one of the Muslims who were captured from the Quraish in the raids. So Amr ibn al-As thought that if he killed this man, it would be a kind of act of kindness towards his people, the Quraysh. He asked the Negus, based on their shared history, to hand over the messenger. The Negus became angry and said, "May your mother be bereaved of you, Amr. Messenger from a man who receives revelation from heaven has been handed over to you." These words struck Amr ibn al-As, may God be pleased with him, the Negus, of course, was a knowledgeable man from among the people of the book, and he knew that this man was truly a prophet. So, he embraced Islam at the Negus's hands and then went from Abyssinia to Medina, thus attaining the status of a companion of the Prophet. The Negus did not go to Medina, so he remained a follower because he had seen the companions, while Amr achieved the status of a companion. This explains the subtle point that Amr was a companion who embraced Islam at the hands of a follower. We have mentioned 16 lessons, and there remains one lesson that I must point out and discuss. I have mentioned it before in previous sessions, which is that Islam is a practical religion. Islam is a practical religion, not just a theoretical one. Our religion, Islam, is not theoretical. Islam is not philosophy. Islam is not a written book. Islam is a practical religion. If you look at our Master Jafar when he wanted to explain the matter of Islam to the Negus, he mentioned to him what the people of the pre-Islamic era used to do. He said, "O king, we were people of ignorance. We worshipped idols, severed kinship ties, mistreated our neighbors, and the strong among us devoured the weak." He then listed the practices of the pre-Islamic era. Then God sent to us a messenger from among us, whose lineage, truthfulness, and trustworthiness we knew. He commanded us to worship God alone and not associate anything with him. He commanded us to maintain kinship ties. He then listed the practical aspects of Islam. This benefits us in two ways, my friends. First, if Islam were merely a theoretical call, a philosophy, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, would have remained at the level of the concept of monotheism without moving on to its practical implications. We would have continued to delve into theological discussions, the study of theories, which later developed in Islamic thought and Islamic heritage, just as other religions developed into theoretical theological discussions regarding the attributes of God. The entire discussion related to it is the theoretical conception, around which the science of Kalam arose, which the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, recommended, and it came in the verse of the Holy Quran that we should not delve into the issue of predestination. This does not mean that we should not speak about the essence of God, the issue of speaking about the essence of God, because these are matters that human minds cannot comprehend. This was the first corruption that entered into Islamic thought and Islamic heritage, and the scholars rose up against it, and of course, at the forefront of them at that time were our imams, starting with Imam Malik, who, when asked about Istiwa, God's ascension to the throne, said what? He said that the meaning of Istiwa, Allah's rising above his throne, is known, but its modality is unknown, and questioning it is an innovation. Imam al-Shafi'i also spoke on this matter. Then, when this issue arose, during the time of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he also took a strong stance on it and said, "We will only address people with what has come from Allah and his messenger, peace and blessings be upon him." Okay. So what I mentioned to you is that it benefits us in two ways. It benefits us in that Islam is a practical religion, not a theoretical philosophy. This means that whoever becomes immersed in theoretical philosophy, goes down its paths and roads and focuses on this subject, is in reality not improving, but rather corrupting. This is because, firstly, he turns away from practical action to that which has no practical effect, nothing to be built upon, and most people don't even understand this, let alone act upon it. He turns away from what has action, fruit, effect, and result to barren matters upon which no action is built. The second matter is that in turning away from this, he neglects the corruption that exists in the affairs of ignorance. Indeed, he occupies his mind with what has no practice, turns away from reforming the affairs of ignorance. Come, O palace, come, come. Therefore, my dear people, we must pay attention. I mentioned to you that when God sent the prophets to their people, the purpose of the monotheism they brought was to reform the corruption within those people. Meant, O my people, worship God, you have no other God besides him. Give full measure and weight. A practical effect of monotheism on a people who cheated in weights and measures was to give full measure and weight. Our master Lot came and called them to worship God and to abandon the immorality they were committing. But why didn't our master Lot come to speak to the people who were committing immorality about giving full measure and weight? Or why didn't our master Shaib come and speak to the people who cheated in weights and measures, telling them to stop their immorality? Islam came to reform people's reality, not to delve into these theoretical philosophical paths upon which no action is based. And it is unfortunate that in our time, and this has been repeated in ancient times, there are those who emerge and appear among the people preoccupying them with these matters. The discussions that divide Muslims, which are essentially the domain of specialized scholars, are something that must be arrested. If Islam were merely a philosophical and theological exercise, Jafar would have engaged the Negus in a debate about God's oneness, that he is not a Trinity and that he was not a Trinity, thus entering into an Islamic-Christian dialogue concerning the nature of God. However, Jafar addressed the pre-Islamic ignorance prevalent among the people and how Islam came to rectify it. This gives you an understanding that the Meccan period was not simply about uttering "there is no God but God" and remaining silent. Rather, it was about rectifying the practices of that pre-Islamic era, such as eating carrion, severing ties with neighbors, and the strong preying on the weak. Therefore, anyone claiming to be a scholar, the kind of person you see taking Muslims away from their corrupt reality and into these theoretical discussions, should be avoided. Moreover, such individuals often mislead many scholars and preachers, turning these issues into banners for enmity and allegiance, and even swearing oaths by them. People are divided between Sunnis and innovators, those with sound beliefs and those who have gone astray, and so on. These are the kinds of issues that have exhausted the nation's energy and are even exhausting the energy of the youth and those working for God's religion. So, if our master Amr ibn al-As returned to Quraish and he had failed in this mission, then the Quraish's oppression of the Muslims intensified because they could no longer achieve their goals. Of course, we have now entered the 6th year of the prophethood. If you remember the timeline of the Prophet's life as we explained it before, I will remind you of it again so that we memorize it. We mentioned that the Prophet's life has two major phases: the Meccan phase and the Medinan phase. The Meccan phase is the phase of the idea, the phase of the call, the phase of the message. The Medinan phase is the phase of the state, the phase of the system, the phase of governance, the phase of authority. How many years was the Meccan period? We mentioned that the first 3 years were the private call, during which the Prophet did not publicly announce the call, but rather he began selecting from among the people those he deemed qualified to carry this message, the special call. Well, from the 3rd year to the 6th year, we mentioned that these were years of apparent weakness, years of openly proclaiming the call, and years of being exposed to harm and torture. In the 6th year, which we are now entering, there was a leap for the Muslims with the conversion of two prominent men, Hamza and Umar ibn al-Khattab, from the 7th year to the 10th year. This is the stage of the siege where the Muslims, along with the Banu Hashim, were besieged in the valley. A great siege lasted 3 years, from the 10th year to the 13th year. This was the stage of searching for after it became clear that the people of Mecca had turned away from this religion and did not believe in it, nor was it expected that they would believe in it. Now, the first important event we find in the 6th year is the conversion of our master Hamza ibn Abd al-Muttalib. May God be pleased with him. Of course, our master Hamza was a man who was, of course, 2 years older than the Prophet. So now, if we wanted to deduce how old our master Hamza was, we would be in the 6th year of the mission, and the Prophet was sent at the age of 40, meaning what year was the Prophet? 46. So, our master Hamza was 48 years old at that time. Okay, our master Hamza could be considered the second most important man in Banu Hashim after Abu Talib. We mentioned that Abu Talib was the leader of Banu Hashim and one of the leaders of Quraish. We consider our master Hamza to be the second most important man. He was a brave and heroic man, and his hobby was hunting. He would go out and hunt. So what happened? What happened was that, while the anger and resentment of Quraysh intensified due to their failure in the face of the Prophet's call, may God bless him and grant him peace, which was spreading and growing. One of the ways Abu Jahl harmed the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, was by verbally abusing him and insulting him vilely. The Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, turned away from him. But the new element in this story is that there was a slave girl belonging to Abdullah ibn Judin. Abdullah ibn Judin was the Sheikh of Banu Taym. We mentioned that the most prominent person among Banu Taym was Abu Bakr. Okay, and if you remember, Abdullah ibn Judin was the man in whose house an important agreement was made that the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, attended before he was sent as a prophet. This was al-feudal. The Hilf al-feudal pact of the virtuous was a pact with a slave girl belonging to Abdullah ibn Judin. She heard what Abu Jahl had done to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, so she waited until Hamza was out hunting. She waited until he returned, then said to him, O Abu Amr, if you had seen what your nephew suffered at the hands of Abu al-Hakam ibn Hisham today, he insulted and harmed him severely. It was Hamza's custom, may God be pleased with him, that when he returned to Mecca from hunting, he would circumambulate the Kaaba. After completing the circumambulation, he would pass by groups of people gathered around, greeting them and keeping them company until he reached his house. However, this time, he rushed like an arrow, searching for Abu Jahl. When he found him sitting, he raised his bow and struck him on the head, inflicting a severe wound. He said to him, You insult him while I am on his religion. Answer me if you wish. Of course, our master Hamza was overcome with anger. This statement came from him in a fit of rage. He meant to say to him, in the general sense we use if you are a man, I am on the religion of Muhammad, show me. So what will you do in this situation? Men from Banu Makzum rose up to defend Abu Jahl, because Abu Jahl's tribe were among the leaders of Banu Makzum. Now we are entering a civil war. A man from the leaders of Banu Hashim struck A man from the leaders of Banu Makhism with his bow. You know, we mentioned before that Abu Jahl's great resentment stemmed from his saying, we and Banu Abd Manaf have been vying for honor. They fed, so we fed. They gave, so we gave, until we became infidels and our ranks were aligned. They said, a prophet has arisen from among us. How can that be for us? The root of the relationship, Makhism and Banu Hashim and Banu Abd Manaf, of course, who are above Banu Hashim, was strained. But Abu Jahl was a clever man. He said, leave Abu Amr alone, for I swear by God, I have insulted his nephew today with a terrible insult. And Abu Jahl extinguished the spark that would ignite this civil war. He was a patriotic man, concerned for his country. Okay, and because, of course, if things take this turn, I mean, if the nature of this war takes this turn, then what will it be? It won't be a problem between the Muslims and the polytheists. And in the end, all the Muslims at that time were only about 40 men in Mecca, meaning they weren't a large number. So if we turn it into a civil war, then what? And that's why you, Abu Jahl, are one of the clever ones you see before you in the Prophet's biography. I mean, now, our master Hamza let the words slip out and said, you insult him while I am on his religion. I say what he says. Answer me if you can. Of course, you know, we are now living in a time where this whole matter of words is completely irrelevant. Of course, I mean, I grew up in Upper Egypt and I witnessed a time when if a man said something, he couldn't go back on it, no matter what he lost, no matter how stubborn he was. I saw this myself, of course, 1,400 years ago. Now, a man, let's not even mention 1,400 years ago. You know that some poets were killed for a single line of poetry they recited. Okay, and that's why some of you in literature know a chapter called The Verses That Killed Their Authors, the most famous of which is, of course, the master of Arab poets, Al-Mutanabi. Al-Mutanabi was a very proud man. He would sit, in the king's cot and say to him, the assembly gathered here will know that I am the best of those whose feet
فالمهم صاحبنا المتنبي كان من قوله في هذه القصيدة أنا الذي نظر الأعمى إلى أدبي وأسمعت كلمات
tread the earth. Can you imagine? He wasn't saying this to his friends at a coffee shop. No, he was saying it in the king's court. Anyway, our friend Al-Mutanabi said in this poem, I am he whose poetry even the blind can see, and whose words even the deaf can hear. The horses, the night, and the desert know me. The desert, the sword, the spear, the paper, and the pen. Now, this is one of the verses that killed its author. Highwaymen attacked him, and they say he wanted to escape, but his servant reminded him of the verse, saying, you are running away, yet you said, the horses, the night, and the desert know me. So he fought until he was killed. This illustrates the issue of determination, the resolve of the Arabs, and the sincerity of loyalty and truthfulness. We mentioned in previous sessions what happened to Al-Samal, the Jewish man in the pre-Islamic era who became an example of loyalty. This is a man who was burdened over his son and his trust to give him back the trust that Imru al-Qais left with you, or we will kill your son. He said, kill my son, for I will not betray my trust. So he slaughtered his son before him, becoming an example of loyalty. He is also the author of the famous poem, one of the finest poems of the Arabs, in which he says if a man does not defile his honor with meanness, then every garment he wears is beautiful. And if he does not bear his own oppression, then there is no way to good praise. You taunt us that our numbers are few. So I said to her, the noble are few, and it is not few who have remnants like us youths who aspire to greatness, and elders. It does not harm us that we are few, for our neighbor is honored, while the neighbor of the many is humiliated. The love of death brings our lives closer, while their lives are long because of it, and no leader among us dies a natural death. None of us dies in bed like that. We all die in battles, and no leader among us dies a natural death, nor does said, you insult him while I am of his religion. So he went to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and said to him, O my nephew, I had said something. And what it meant was, I haven't tasted sleep. Of course, he said it out of anger and frustration. So, speak to me, my nephew, and tell me, so that perhaps God will make a way for me to reach that. So the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, spoke to him, prayed for him, and stroked his chest. And so, our master Hamza entered Islam. It is true that the entry point was anger, but it ended with him believing in Islam, and God opened his heart to Islam. Now, here, let us understand that it is in the nature of the human soul that there may be multiple entry points to Islam. That is why the companions, may God be pleased with them, when they were describing the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, the Messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, was never asked for anything in the name of Islam without giving it. Anything that could bring a person closer to Islam, the Prophet would give it to him. He even gave a Bedouin sheep between two mountains. Imagine a huge fortune, a fortune of sheep between two mountains. So he went out saying, O people, embrace Islam, for Muhammad gives like one who does not fear poverty. And then we will see in the battle of Hunain that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, gave to a people who had only embraced Islam a few days before. When the Ansar found something in themselves, he said, O Ansar, have you found something in yourselves concerning a paltry, worldly gain with which I have won over the hearts of people who have not yet embraced Islam? I have entrusted you to your Islam, and they are called those whose hearts are to be won over. These are people who are given money so that the hearts of Muslims may be won over. Those whose hearts are to be won over are among the recipients of zakat. That is, when the Islamic State collects zakat from the people, one of the uses of it is spending on certain people to endear them to Islam. The companions mentioned some people who said, if a man embraces Islam only for the money, then as soon as he enters Islam, faith permeates his heart, and he becomes a Muslim, he loses his wealth. Glory be to God, I forget the exact wording, but it is as soon as he embraces Islam and does not sell anything. That is, the world is worth nothing to him. He renounces the world, but the beginning of his entry into Islam was due to money. Human souls are truly attracted through many means, including this means of wealth. Therefore, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, no wealth has benefited me as much as what has benefited me. The wealth of Abu Bakr, may God be pleased with him. Okay, so here's how our master Hamza, may God be pleased with him, embraced Islam. They say it was 3 days or more after Hamza's conversion. The details aren't clear in the biography that our master Umar, may God be pleased with him, also embraced Islam. Of course, Hamza's conversion was a disaster for the Quraysh, because if Abu Talib, our problem with Banu Hashim was Abu Talib, who refused to accept Muhammad's conversion, then the problem had now doubled. The second most powerful man in Banu Hashim was Hamza, who not only refused to accept Muhammad's conversion out of tribal loyalty, but he himself had also become a Muslim. Okay, now regarding our master humor, my friends. Firstly, there is no authentic account that tells us how Umar, may God be pleased with him, embraced Islam. There is no authentic account. By authentic account, I mean according to the methodology of the Hadith scholars. These Hadith scholars are our Imams and our pride as Muslims, men who accepting historical accounts. So, the Hadith scholars' criteria were so stringent that no authentic account of Umar's conversion escaped us, but we can reconcile what is found in authentic hadiths with what is narrated by those who study the battles and biographies. A first thing that entered the heart of our master Umar regarding Islam was something that happened to him during the pre-Islamic era. Narrations differ as to whether this pre-Islamic era refers to the time before the Prophet was sent, or, as some hadiths explicitly state, before he himself entered Islam. In other words, is the pre-Islamic era the ignorance of the people, or the ignorance of Umar himself? Of course, our master Abdullah ibn Umar narrates this hadith, saying, I never saw Umar say anything about his father except that it turned out to be as he said. Our Master Umar was a man of keen insight who never erred. He said, one day a man passed by him. Of course, the narration in Bukhari doesn't name this man. Another narration names him as Suwaid ibn Karib. Umar, may God be pleased with him, said, I was mistaken. Or perhaps this man is still on the religion he followed during the pre-Islamic era, or perhaps he was their soothsayer. Or Master Umar considered this person's outward appearance of Islam. Was he we are mistaken, or this man is still an unbeliever, or he was their soothsayer in the pre-Islamic era. They brought him in, and this happened during the caliphate of Umar. Umar said to him, look, you are one of these three. Sa'd ibn Karib said, I have never seen you today. I have never seen a man who greeted a Muslim like this. Now, a Muslim is here, and you are telling him, you are one of these three. Umar said, tell me, Sa'd ibn Karib, you are one of these three, so what do you mean by you woe? And tell me, Umar insisted, and he said, yes, I was their soothsayer in the pre-Islamic era. Then, Umar said to Sa'd ibn Karib, tell me the most amazing thing your jinn brought you, meaning the jinn you were in contact with. He said, she came to me one day while I was between wakefulness and sleep, and I saw fear in her face. Then she recited verses of poetry. Have you not seen the jinn and their despair? The gist of it is that now a prophet has appeared, meaning there is widespread fear among the jinn, because a prophet is about to appear. Umar remembered this situation, the situation we need now, and it is the place the witness said, yes, our Master Omar, remember a situation similar to the one that Suwaid bin Karib narrated. What was the situation that our Master Omar mentioned? He said, I was at the house when a man came to slaughter his sheep, and suddenly a voice came out of it, the most piercing voice I had ever heard from this sheep. A very clear voice came out of it saying, O Jali, an eloquent man says, there is no God but God. He said, the people dispersed. Of course, when the people heard the voice from this sheep, they were afraid and panicked and dispersed. Our master Omar, with his turban, his heart, said, by God, we will stay until I see this news. So he heard the same voice again. O Jali, an eloquent man, says, there is no God but God. Okay, may God reward you. Well, he said, it was not long before it was said, a prophet was sent. So this is the first situation that our master Omar ibn Al-Khattab had in what? Regarding the issue of Islam, this is a sound narration, and it is in Bukhari. We mentioned that our master Umar was among those who tortured those who embraced Islam, beat some of them until they were exhausted, not leaving them until they were completely worn out. Then one day he saw some of his maternal uncles. These maternal uncles were the Banu Makhzum. Our Master Umar's mother was named Hantamar. Hantamar was the sister of Abu Jahl, so his maternal uncles were the Banu Makhzum. Then one day he saw some of the emigrants to Abyssinia. He saw Abular, the daughter of Hantamar or the daughter of Kartmar. I saw her, I saw both names and I don't know which is more likely. He saw her preparing her belongings to emigrate to Abyssinia. Her husband was Amir ibn Rabi'ah. Amir ibn Rabi'ah was also from the Banu Makhzum. His brother was Ayash ibn Abi Rabi'ah, who was Abu Jahl's maternal half-brother. So, we are now talking about his maternal uncles. When he saw her, he said, it is time to leave. So, Abular, she said, yes, by God, we will leave and depart from you. After you harmed and oppressed us, we went to where we worship God. He said, may God be with you. She said, when Abu Amir, her husband, came, I said to him, I have never seen Umar as I saw him today. Meaning, I saw in him a tenderness the like of which I have never seen before. He only said such and such, so I said such, and he said, may God be with you. And I saw a tenderness I have never seen before. He said, do you hope for Umar's conversion to Islam? By God, he will not convert until the donkey of Al-Khattab converts. He laughed. Of course, this statement indicates the extent of the verse in which our master Umar was, God willing, when the donkey converts. What does that mean? Then, Umar will convert after it. Well, this is a situation that has also been established. This hadith is in Al-Tirmidhi and it is narrated on the authority of Abdullah ibn Umar that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, O God, strengthen Islam with the one of these two men whom you love most, Abu Jahl ibn Hisham or Umar ibn Al-Khattab. Abdullah said, so, Umar was the one whom I loved most, by God, the blessed and exalted. Beautiful. So, this is another snapshot and another scene. Now we come to the famous story of the conversion of our master Umar to Islam, which is his entering upon Fatima bint Al-Khattab. Well, look, everyone, prayers and peace be upon the Prophet. This narration, as I told you, is a well-known one, but it is not authentic according to the standards of hadith scholars. This narration has a small flaw because it contradicts what is narrated in Bukhari. Bukhari narrated this in the book of the virtues of the companions, in the chapter on the conversion of Umar, may God be pleased with him. Bukhari narrated that our master Sa'id ibn Zayd, Sa'id ibn Zayd, Sa'id ibn Zayd is Sa'id ibn Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufail. Our master Umar is Umar ibn Al-Khattab ibn Nufail. So, our master Sa'id was his cousin, or more precisely, his cousin. This Sa'id was married to Umar's sister, Fatima bint Al-Khattab. Said said, I saw myself, and Umar had bound me and his sister for Islam. So, our master Umar knew that they had converted to Islam and had them bound, meaning God bound them for a day or two. God knows how long. But we learn from this authentic narration that our master Umar was not surprised by the conversion of his sister and her husband, as the well-known narration about Umar's conversion says. This is the point of contention between the two narrations, that our master Umar was not surprised, but after that, it is possible that this whole story is permissible, except the point is that he was surprised. It's not appropriate to say punishment and then go on YouTube and tell you it's against children's rights and stuff. Okay, let's wait and pray for the Prophet. How does the narration say it? The narration is as follows: Our Master Omar, may God be pleased with him. Now, if you imagine our Master Omar and his status in the pre-Islamic era, his opinion now is the opinion of his people that this Islam is spreading. This Islam is a harbinger of civil war, right? So perhaps the solution really lies in what? Killing the Prophet would end this problem. The story says that Abu Jahl said, "Who will kill Muhammad and receive 100 camels?" Omar said, "I am ready for it." Of course, 100 camels. Folks, if we were to compare that to our time today, what would we say? He has 100 Land Cruiser cars, for example. Of course, I don't understand cars, but that's the last I heard of. After that, there are Lamborghinis and things like that. I don't know the details, but the bottom line is 100 camels, a great fortune, similar to 100 cars now, meaning a fleet of cars. He said that he had them. Then he took his sword and asked, "Where is Muhammad?" They said, "In a house near Safar," meaning the house of Al-Arqam ibn Abi Al-Arqam. So he went to him. On the way, he met a man from Bani Adi, meaning from the tribe of Omar, named Ni'am ibn Abdullah al-Naram. He said, "O Omar, where are you going while you are wearing your sword?" He said, "I am going to this man, Muhammad." He said, "And what do you want with him?" He said, "Kill him." He said, "You have been deceived by yourself. What are you going to say? Do you think the Banu Hashim will let you walk on the earth? What are you going to do?" The Banu Adi are like the ones who will be sacrificed in this conflict. The Banu Adi are the ones who will be at the forefront of igniting this civil war. He said, "Do you think the Banu Hashim will let you?" And then what is this? Our master. This is our master, Naim al-Naram. He said, "If you are going to do something, then look at your family, your sister and your brother-in-law, who is Said ibn Zayd, the brother-in-law, and the husband of your sister, who has embraced Islam. So you are also looking here at the man who sacrificed a tower, sacrificed a house from his family instead of what? Instead of what comes to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. He said, if you are going to do something, then fix your own affairs first." So, our Master Umar went to them. Well, our Master Umar went and stood behind the door. It was their good fortune, or rather their misfortune, that they were studying the Quran together, and Karbab ibn al-Arat was with them, studying the Quran. Umar, while outside the door, heard these muffled voices, which were their study of the Quran. Of course, he knocked on the door. They recognized his voice. What happened? An emergency. Our Master Karbab hid somewhere, so he hid in some part of the house. Fatima put the newspaper under her, and then she asked, "What is this murmuring I heard earlier?" They said they hadn't heard anything. He said, "No, by God, I have heard. And perhaps you too have converted and followed Muhammad." Of course, the awe of our Master Umar, and this information, as if it were the boldness of our Master Said bin Zayd, So he said to him, "What if, O Umar, the truth is contrary to your religion?" He said, "If you were to convert, then strike him. We will not enter into a discussion now." Laughter. Yes, since you entered into this approach, which is, what if the truth is contrary to your religion? It seems you actually did it. So he struck him. Then his sister came to defend her husband, so he slapped her, so much so that she bled, and he regretted that. Here, our master Umar began to regret that, and it seems that in her impulsiveness he saw the scroll she was reading, so he wanted to take it from her. So she took it from him and said, "This is not permissible for you." He said, "I want it," meaning, "I want to read it, for what I said has come to pass." So she said, "You are impure, and this is not. And this is the strength of faith, of course." Fatima bint al-Khartab, with our master Umar, meaning it is a moment like that, in which God, blessed and exalted is He, opens many moments of steadfastness for His believing servants. When we ask some of our brothers, meaning what they did, they tell you, "By God, I did not, I didn't know why I was saying that." What does it mean that God opened laughs in this situation with this response? So, in the newspaper, there was Surah Tarhar, and our master Omar recited Surah Tarhar. Of course, when you read these verses and try to recall the mind and heart of our master Omar during the pre-Islamic era, it's not far-fetched to be affected by these verses. I mean, it's not far-fetched at all, because what are these verses? The verses in Surah Tarhar are the words of God Almighty. Tarhar: "We have not sent down the Quran to you to cause you distress, but only to remind those who fear Allah. A revelation from He who created the earth and the highest heavens, the most merciful, who is established on the throne. To Him belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth and whatever is between them and whatever is under the soil. And if you speak aloud, then indeed He knows what is secret and what is more hidden. God, there is no deity except Him. To Him belong the most beautiful names." And I say the Quran. If we recall the Arab soul, the Arab taste, and the Arab language, then the Quran is a wondrous and miraculous text, because this is a description of God. Blessed and exalted is He, a tremendous description, a profound description, a great description. What I remember is that Sheikh al-Sharawi, may God have mercy on him, used to say that he would explain it by saying, for example, if you find a wallet on the ground or in any street and its owner comes and tells you the wallet's description 1, 2, 3, 4, you have no doubt that he is the owner. Sheikh al-Sharawi, may God have mercy on him, says God Almighty described Himself in ways that no one else could. God mentioned that He is the creator of the heavens and the earth, and He knows what is in the heavens and the earth. He knows what you conceal and what you reveal. To Him belongs what is in the heavens and what is on the earth and what is between them and what is beneath the soil. These are matters that no one can claim for themselves, and no one has ever claimed them for themselves. No one has attributed to themselves what God has attributed to Himself. This indicates that He is the true God, because even Pharaoh, who was so arrogant that he said, "I am your Lord, Most High, and I know of no other God for you besides me," did not dare to say that he ruled over people before he was born, or that he knew people before he was born. Every human being has experienced weakness, hardship, and need for others. So now, when a man sees this description of God Almighty in Mecca or in the Arabian Peninsula, and He is exalted, so there is no doubt that this awe and fear and this sound statement are in his heart. Omar says, "Is it because of this that the Quraysh fled?" It is inappropriate for someone who says this to worship someone other than him. You are right. In the end, if you look at the deities,
بهذا الوصف. تمام.
no deity can describe itself with this description. Right? This description instills in the heart awe, reverence, and veneration for God Almighty.
وقال دلوني على رسول
God opened his heart to Islam, and he said, "Show me the messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him." So he went to the house where the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was and knocked on the door. The atmosphere became tense again. Of course, the companions were hiding with the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in the house. And this is one of the great heroes of torture. We said, he will not convert until the donkey of Al-Khartab converts. So he reached the secret house, or the safe hiding place. Hamza said, "Leave him be. If he intends good, then so be it. If not, we will
إن كانت الأخرى قتلناه. في الآخر برضو المسلمين
kill him." In the end, the
حمزة. تمام.
Muslims were satisfied. Hamza had just one. Here, the two accounts differ. One account says that Hamza grabbed him by the collar of his cloak and pulled him. Another account
يعني جذبه جذبة. ورواية أخرى تقول بأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم هو الذي
says that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, did this, saying to him, "Isn't it time for you to convert, O Umar? Isn't it time for you before God sends down a calamity upon you?" He said, "O Messenger of God, I have come as a believer, and I bear witness that there is no God but God, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the Messenger of God." Then he said, "God is great." The people then learned that the rest of the companions knew that Umar had embraced Islam. This is based on a weak hadith which states that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said that Umar and I emphasize that it is weak used to stay overnight near the Kaaba. He heard the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, praying, but the Prophet didn't recognize him. The Prophet preferred to pray facing Jerusalem, so he would place the Kaaba between himself and Jerusalem. Umar approached from a direction the Prophet couldn't see, slipping under the Kaaba's coverings. He continued to move stealthily until he was facing the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and heard his recitation. However, he didn't embrace Islam, and the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, didn't notice him. This was mentioned, and it was also mentioned that he followed the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and that the Prophet noticed him when he followed him in some ways. However, the hadith doesn't mention what resulted from this. A most famous or widely known account of Umar's conversion states that this was his first exposure to the Holy Quran. This isn't surprising, as we mentioned before that the polytheists conspired to prevent anyone from hearing the Holy Quran. They said, "Do not listen to this Quran, and remain silent so that you may prevail." Some propaganda led a man like Tufail ibn Amr to al-Dorsi put 2 cotton balls in his ears so that the Holy Quran wouldn't reach him. We also mentioned how some polytheists sneaked in to hear the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, speak. The story we mentioned is about Umayr ibn Karlaf, Al-Aknas ibn Sharik, and Abu Jahl. In it, Abu Jahl uttered his famous words, "We and the Banu Abd Manaf are vying for honor," because the Quran had begun to influence them. Now, Matter had suffered 2 severe blows in a matter of days. The second man in Banu Hashim embraced Islam, and the first man in Banu Adi also converted. How could the first man be Umar ibn al-Khattab? Was and he the eldest of his brothers. His brother, Zayd ibn al-Khattab, was older than him, and their father, al-Khattab ibn Nufail, was alive at that time. However, Umar's character, competence, and eloquence led al-Khattab to relinquish his position in Dar al-Nadwar to Umar, and his older brother, Zayd ibn al-Khattab, accepted this. So, Umar, even in the pre-Islamic era, was 26 years. Before he was 26, our master Omar was the ambassador of the Quraysh and the one who defended them. The one who defended them means the man who could defend them, something closer to the official spokesperson. In our modern terminology, our master Omar, it is true that his tribe, Adi, was not one of the major tribes in the Quraysh, but he was the representative of this tribe in the Quraysh government in the council, the ruling council or the presidential council of the Quraysh. So of course, this was what our master Omar did. So, what did our master Omar do when he first embraced Islam? Of course, here the strength of our master Omar appears to you. When he or die, he said, yes, by God, we are. He said, then why the secrecy? By God, we will travel until we pray in the sacred house. So, at the moment when he embraced Islam, he had a plan for what? To confront, according to the measure of the people of determination, the determinations come, and according to the measure of the generous, the noble deeds come, and the small things appear great in the eyes of the small, and the great things appear small in the eyes of the great. So, the first thing he thought about when he converted to Islam was the confrontation. But our master Omar, what confrontation did he plan for? On his personal level, the first thing he did was go to Abu Jahl, his uncle. He went to Abu Jahl, his uncle. He opened his door for him. Welcome, my nephew. He said, didn't you know that I have converted to Islam? You feel what he meant. He was looking for a fight. Laughs. Didn't you know that I have converted to Islam? He said, and I did. He said, yes. He said, don't do it. He said, yes, I did. He said, don't do it. He said, yes, I did. He said, then close the door behind me and said, may God curse you and what you have brought, and closed the door. So there's nothing, there's no action, meaning nothing happened. He said, so I went to a man from the leaders of the Quraysh, but the narration did not reveal his name. He said, and he did the same, but he didn't achieve what he wanted. Then he sat down and said, O Quraysh, report the news. Who is here? Who is here? What does that mean? Who is here? CNN. Where is the Al Jazeera correspondent? Where is the one who will broadcast the news? So they directed him to a man named Jamil ibn Ma'mar al-Jumari. He said, so he went to him while he was sitting in the hair, the semicircular area of the Kaaba. He said, O Jamil, don't you know that I have converted to Islam? Of course, the narrator of the hadith is our master Umar ibn Umar, who was 5 years old at that time. He says, and I was a young boy. He said, by God, he didn't reply to him with a single word. He said to him, I have converted to Islam. He said, so he immediately tore off his cloak. Yes, breaking news exactly like that, and stood up and said, O people of Quraysh, don't you know that Umar has converted? Of course, our master Abdullah ibn Umar says, so he stood up, dragging his cloak, and Umar followed him, and Abu Tamim followed him. He said, O people of Quraysh. So Umar said, I lied. I have not converted, but I have converted to Islam. I bear witness that there is no God but God, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God. And this was the battle that our master Umar ibn Ma'mar wanted. He said, so the people rushed towards him. Of course, our master Omar was also a knight, a brave and strong man. If a group attacked him, he would seize their leader, the most important one among them. It is narrated that he seized Utbah ibn Rabi'ah and put his hand in his eye until Utbah cried out. They kept hitting him, and he hit them back until he became exhausted. Our master Omar became exhausted, so he sat down and said, do as you see fit. By God, if we were 300 men, we would have left it to you, or you would have left it to us. Of course, this statement requires some reflection. By God, they were around 40, 50, or 60 men, not many. But when our master Omar said, if we were 300 men, we would have left it to you, or you would have left it to us. You feel, in this statement, 300 men, that means not 600 half men, not 1,200 quarter men. They are 300. If there were 300 Muslims in a city like Mecca, Mecca could only surrender to one side or the other. Even though the number of polytheists was Mecca was full of thousands, but they were aiming for only 300 Muslims. Okay, so now, our master Umar was awake, and they kept beating him until a man, Al-Az ibn Wa'il al-Sami, came to him and said, you know, they said, don't you know that Umar has converted to Islam? He said, and that's not a man who chose for himself. Of course, Al-Az ibn Wa'il al-Sarmi, from the Barnu Sarm, was the father of Amr ibn al-As. They were allies of the Barnu Adi. In the pre-Islamic era, they were allies of the Barnu Adi in the pre-Islamic era. So here, our master Umar also benefited from one of the pre-Islamic laws, and from the alliances that existed between his people and others from the pre-Islamic alliances. Okay, this famous narration is found in Bukhari, 2 narrations containing this, but in a slightly different way. It is that our master Umar stayed in his house after his conversion to Islam, fearing that if he went out, the valley would flood him. Now, there was a shock in Mecca, and approximately when the battle began, which our master Umar himself ignited, they besieged him in the house, fearing that if he went out, the valley would flood him. Ibn Umar, the narrator of the hadith, said, and I see it while I am on the roof of my house. Our master Abdullah ibn Umar narrates this scene, being an eyewitness at the time that our master Umar was unable to leave his house, saying, these people claim they will kill me. It seems that Al-Az ibn Wa'il al-Sarmi initially turned people away from him. But here, in this other narration, Al-Az ibn Wa'il al-Sarmi took him under his protection. We mentioned that the law of protection was one of the established and firmly rooted laws in the pre-Islamic era. And when the people turned away from our master Umar, this was a victory. Our master Abdullah ibn Masud said, we have remained honored since Umar embraced Islam. And among what was said about Umar was that his conversion was an honor, and a transformation occurred in the situation of the Muslims in Mecca. Of course, my dear people, the conversion of Hamza and the conversion of Umar. Look, the power of the call to faith rests on men. The call to faith rests on men. Therefore, I want to draw an important note here about the error of the saying, if one of our leaders departs, 1,000 will take his place, and similar statements. No, leaders are a rare element. Leaders are a rare element. A leader is almost irreplaceable, so belittling them is underestimating the importance of leadership. Is a modern myth and delusion, and neglecting leaders is a serious problem. This issue has even become a field of study within security sciences, and books have been written about it, including books on targeted assassinations and their impact. I mentioned in a previous session a Rand Corporation report on how terrorist groups end. It found that 40% of these groups end with the assassination of influential leaders. Assassinating a leader either paves the way for a less capable and less skilled leader, or it causes divisions within the movement, preventing it from uniting under a single leader. Therefore, the issue of men is of paramount importance. Our understanding of the Prophet Muhammad's life, peace and blessings be upon him, is that he was always surrounded by guards. Initially, he was protected by his tribe, Banu Hashim, a practice rooted in the pre-Islamic lore of tribalism. Later, he was protected by his companions, until God revealed the verse, "And Allah will protect you from the people," at which point the Prophet dismissed the guards. This matter of security, or rather, the importance of safeguarding men and not neglecting them, is crucial in the leadership. Well, after this, we can see that we entered another phase with Mecca, a phase that didn't last long, but this phase after the conversion of Hamza and Omar, we began to see the people of Mecca calming down and starting to reconsider and adopt new methods in dealing with this phenomenon, the phenomenon of Islam. Ibrahim doesn't even see me. Well, let's pray for the Prophet. This phase, my friends, we see it in more than one event. The first event is that the Muslims went out in two rows, one led by Hamza and the other by Omar, and they prayed at the Kaaba and circumambulated the house, and the polytheists did not confront them. This, in part, was a kind of appeasement on the part of Mecca, because in the end, we are talking about around 40, 50, or 60 Muslims. So, in the end, if there had been a decision to proceed with the clash, it would have been possible. But this permission is a kind of appeasement. The second thing is that the polytheists now began to enter into the matter of negotiations and compromises, meaning new offers began to emerge. And this is the usual practice, by the way. Look, the usual practice is that if a new idea emerges, the ruling regime deals with it by neglecting it. This is the first stage. Neglect, hoping it will die out on its own. Okay, if it emerges, then they begin to deal with it through peaceful, legal means. Peaceful, legal means, which is distortion, media campaigns, things that, you know, without getting into direct confrontation, can distort this movement or its followers, and so on. Okay, if this doesn't work, we enter into harsh legal methods. Also, as we said, torture, according to the Constitution and the law. In the previous parliament, it was said that each group should turn against the one among them who followed Muhammad. Okay, if this didn't work, here the issue of the verse begins. Negotiations and offers. Here we find, for example, that the Quraish, for the first time, presented an offer that included a concession from their falsehood. A delegation from the Quraish went to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, including Al-Walid ibn al-Mughir and Umayyah ibn Khalaf, and so on. They said, "O Muhammad, the new offer is this, that we worship your God for a year, and you worship our gods for a year. If our gods are better, then you will benefit from them, and if your God is good, we will benefit from this." This is an offer being presented now for the first time. It is about reaching a middle ground. So the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "I will consult my Lord." Then the words of God Almighty were revealed, say, "O disbelievers, I do not worship what you worship, nor do you worship what I worship, nor will I worship what you have worshipped, nor will you worship what I worship. For you is your religion, and for me is my religion." This repetition in the verses indicates the level of the verse, the level of decisiveness, certainty, firmness, and rigor in the discourse. Of course, one of the interesting things here is that the tolerant group tells you not to call anyone a disbeliever. God in the Quran says, "For you is your religion," and for me is my religion, right? So you say to him, but this verse is in Surah Al-Kafirun. Last, so he who disbelieved was confounded. Okay, for you is your religion, and for me is my religion. This is said to the disbelievers. Now, the second offer is the offer that Utbah ibn Rabi'ah took. Utbah ibn Rabi'ah, the narration describes him as the most knowledgeable of the Quraish in poetry, magic, and divination. Well, Utbah ibn Rabi'ah went to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and informed the great man we mentioned at that time. Utbah ibn Rabi'ah was in his 20s or 30s. He said to him, O Muhammad, are you better than Abd al-Muttalib? This is the first embarrassment. Are you better than Abd al-Muttalib? This, as we have mentioned more than once, indicates the high esteem in which Abd al-Muttalib was held by the Quraysh. If you claim that they are better than you, then they worshipped the gods you have criticized. And if you claim that you are better than them, then speak up. The implication in this statement is as if he is saying, yes, say it. Say, I am better than them. Do you dare to say I am better than Abd al-Muttalib? Well, oh man, if you only want wealth with this matter, we will gather our riches for you until you become the wealthiest man in Quraysh. If you only want honor with this, we will make you our leader so that we will not decide anything without you. And if you only have desires, meaning lust and women, then choose any of the women of Quraysh you wish, and we will marry you to 10 of them. And if what comes to you is a vision, meaning a jinn, we will seek medical treatment for you, for, by God, we have never seen anyone more ill-omened to his people than you. You have criticized our gods and divided our community. It was said that there was a soothsayer among the Quraysh, and Quraysh is a sorcerer. So, by God, we are not waiting. We are not waiting except like the cry of love, until we rise up to the swords, until we annihilate each other. What does this mean? He is telling him, in this situation, we have not seen anyone more ominous for your people than you. Now, the tribes and Mecca are divided and our reputation has been tarnished in foreign lands. It has been said that there is a soothsayer and a sorcerer in Quraysh, but worse than that is the danger of civil war and tension, which any incident could ignite. So we are not waiting except like the cry of a pregnant woman. I mean, now if a pregnant woman cries out while giving birth, we will remember that two people fought with each other and killed each other. So we will rise up to the sword until we annihilate each other. He says, and the Prophet, may God's prayers and peace be upon him, is listening while he is reclining or leaning on his hands. He said, have you finished, O Abu al-Walid? He said yes. So the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, recited to him the beginning of Surah Fussilat. The beginning of Surah Fussilat, of course, many of us probably know it by heart. We've all certainly come across it, but none of us have the same effect it had on Utbah ibn Rabi'ah. Of course, I do and want you to underestimate the matter of offers and negotiations. This matter, my friends, can sometimes be more difficult than torture. It means being faced with choices, and these are the desires of the soul. These are the desires of the soul beautified for people is the love of that which they desire of women and sons. Heaped up sums of gold and silver, fine branded horses, cattle and crafts. So, a person shouldn't underestimate the matter of negotiation and bargaining. This is a serious matter, and Allah, blessed and exalted is He, said to His Prophet, and they were about to tempt you away from some of what we revealed to you, to invent against us something else, and then they would have taken you as a close friend, and if we had not strengthened you, you would have inclined to them a little. This is said to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, the most steadfast of people in faith, the most complete of people in faith. And if we had not strengthened you, you would have inclined to them a little. If we have made you taste the double of life and the double of death, then no one should underestimate the difficulty of these offers. And there were among us those who would fall into things far, far less than these. Well, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, recited to him the beginning of Surah Al-Fasl. So, what does Surah Al-Fasl say? Har-Mim, a revelation from the most gracious, the most merciful book whose verses are explained in detail, an Arabic Quran for a people who understand. This book is a bearer of good tidings and a warner, but most of them turn away. So they do not hear, and they say, our hearts are veiled from that to which you invite us. Hearts are covered, and they say, our hearts are veiled from that to which you invite us, and in our ears is deafness, and between us and you is a barrier. So do what you will, for we are doing what you will. Say, I am only a man like you, to whom it has been revealed that your God is but one God, so take a straight path to him and seek his forgiveness. And woe to the polytheists who do not give zakah. They do not give zakah, meaning they do not believe in the oneness of God, because zakah was not yet obligatory at that time, which is the oneness of God, and in the hereafter they are disbelievers. Indeed, those who believe and do righteous deeds will have a reward uninterrupted. Say, do you indeed disbelieve in He who created the earth in 2 days, and you make rivals to Him? That is the Lord of the worlds, and He placed therein firmly set mountains, above which are mountains, and He blessed it and determined therein its sustenance in 4 days, equal for those who ask. Then He turned to the sky while it was smoke and said to it and to the earth, come willingly or unwillingly. They said, we have come willingly. So He completed them as 7 heavens in 2 days, and we revealed to each heaven its command, and we adorned the nearest heaven with lamps and made it a protection. That is the determination of the exalted in might, the knowing. But if they turn away, then say, I have warned you of a thunderbolt, like the thunderbolt of Ad and Thamud. Then Utbah said, enough, enough, O Muhammad, and he returned from him. How did these verses occur to Utbah? He came to the Prophet offering him these bargains. First, you see that the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, in all of this Quran, chose for him a surah, meaning he chose a surah that contains meanings that confirm that Muhammad, may God bless him and grant him peace, did not bring this matter from himself. A revelation from the most gracious, the most merciful, a book whose verses are explained in detail. An Arabic Quran. It is not from Muhammad. Say, I am only a man like you, to whom revelation is sent. Then the verses say to our Master Muhammad, say, indeed, you disbelieve. So, the verses defend the Prophet, may God bless him. And grant him peace, that he is the one who makes the decision in this matter, the one who chooses in this matter. The matter is not with me. I am only a man like you, to whom revelation is sent. Your God is only one God, so be upright to him and seek his forgiveness. And woe to the polytheists. A second matter, Utbah ibn Rabi'ah came to him and said, we will gather our wealth for you until you become the richest man in Quraish. Choose any of the women of Quraish you wish, and we will marry you to any 10. If you only desire this kingdom, we will make you our leader, and we will not decide any matter without you. The Prophet surprised him with a speech encompassing the entire universe. You disbelieve in the one who created the earth in 2 days and set up rivals to him. That is the Lord of the worlds. He placed therein firmly set mountains over its surface and blessed it. He distanced the earth. Then he turned to the heaven while it was smoke and said to it and to the earth, come willingly or unwillingly. So he completed them as 7 heavens and revealed to each heaven its command. And we adorned the lowest heaven with lamps. The heaven, you see, this great, immense thing is the lowest heaven. We adorned it with lamps, not necessarily enormous stars, but rather lamps. But if they turn away, then say, I have warned you of a thunderbolt like the thunderbolt of Ad and Thamud. Here again, the Prophet relied on what we previously called the capital of the caller to Islam. What is the capital of the caller to Islam? Truthfulness. A Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was never known to have lied. That horsemen were behind this valley, about to attack you. Would you believe me? They said, yes, we have never known you to lie. Then Utbah ibn Rabi'ah came, meaning he came to speak about the Quraish, the richest man of the Quraish, the women of the Quraish. We will seek medicine for you. We will make you our leader. He was surprised by a speech encompassing the entire universe, and he was surprised by a threat beyond human capacity, uttered by a truthful man who had never been known to lie. We will continue, God willing, next time. I ask God, the blessed and exalted, to teach us what benefits us, to make what he has taught us